Okay, so we're back and ready to plunge back into this whole prayer debate. I gotta say, the waters are still pretty murky from last time.
Yeah, deep dives can get like that. Sometimes you come up with more questions than answers.
Totally. But the good thing is, we get to grapple with some pretty thought-provoking stuff along the way.
Hmm.
And today, we've got this exchange between at Muck and at Light of Reflection that really got me thinking.
Oh, yeah. What'd they have to say?
Well, at Muck lays out some pretty standard arguments against belief, the kind of stuff you hear a lot. But then at Light of Reflection comes back with some pretty sharp, even funny rebuttals.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Humor is always a good sign. So, set the stage for us. What's the first point of contention?
Well, at Muck it kicks things off by saying, prayer is nothing more than a desperate yelp. Like, a dog howling at the moon when it's feeling lost and alone.
Hmm. That's a pretty bleak take, isn't it? Reducing this complex human behavior to just a primal cry for help.
Right. I mean, sure, sometimes people pray when they're desperate, but there's got to be more to it than that, right?
Yeah. I think so. At Light of Reflection makes a good point about how humans across history and cultures have always turned to something bigger than themselves. I mean, we've built entire religions, moral codes, you name it, around this impulse to connect with the unseen.
Yeah, and they even talk about how people have attributed scientific breakthroughs to some kind of divine inspiration. I mean, it's not just about crying out in distress. There's this whole other side of prayer that's about awe, gratitude, searching for meaning.
Exactly. And it's not like dogs are building cathedrals or writing symphonies, right?
Yeah,
There's something uniquely human about this drive to connect with something beyond the material world.
totally. So if prayer is just a meaningless yelp, why this universal instinct to reach out to something bigger than ourselves?
It really makes you wonder, is it all just cultural programming like At Muck suggests? Or is there something more innate, something woven into the fabric of our being?
Because that's at Muck's next argument. They say belief is basically like being assigned a role in a play. You're born into a certain culture, handed your lines, and expected to perform accordingly. No free will, just cultural conditioning.
The old cultural backdrop argument. It's a popular one. But you know what At Light of Reflection points out?
What's that?
They say, well, doesn't that same logic apply to skepticism and atheism? I mean, aren't those also products of a particular cultural context?
Whoa, yeah, they're basically saying you can't say faith is just blind adherence to cultural norms while claiming skepticism is somehow objective. That's a pretty clever point.
Right. It's like saying only religious people are influenced by their upbringing, while skeptics are somehow immune.
And then at Light of Reflection takes it a step further. They say, look, nature itself doesn't seem to care about our beliefs. Whether we're praying to Allah, Yahweh, or conducting scientific experiments, the universe just keeps on spinning.
That's a really interesting observation. It kind of shifts the focus away from proving or disproving God's existence and onto the question of why humans are so obsessed with finding meaning and purpose, regardless of their beliefs.
Yeah, like if it all boils down to just random chance,
Yeah.
why are we so driven to find order and purpose in a seemingly indifferent universe?
Right. It's like we're hardwired to seek something beyond the material, even if we can't quite explain it. And this brings us to, at Light of Reflection's homeowner example.
Oh yeah, this one's a good one.
So imagine a massive fire tearing through a neighborhood. One homeowner, fleeing for their life, cries out, God, save this house! And miraculously, it's the only one left standing.
Okay, so what are we supposed to make of that? Pure luck, divine intervention.
Exactly. It's like At Light of Reflection is saying, even if you're a hardcore skeptic, can you honestly say you wouldn't feel a flicker of, I don't know, something if you were in that homeowner's shoes?
That's a really powerful image. It makes you wonder, in those moments of extreme desperation, do even the most rational among us reach for something beyond the tangible?
I think it speaks to a deeper truth about human nature. We're not just rational beings, we're also emotional, spiritual creatures who crave connection and meaning. And sometimes that means acknowledging the possibility of something bigger than ourselves.
So where does this leave us? Is faith just a product of our environment, or is it something more profound?
Maybe it's both. Maybe it's this complex interplay between our cultural conditioning and a deeper yearning for something beyond the physical realm.
And maybe that very tension is what makes faith so compelling.
I think At Light of Reflection would agree. They're not trying to shove any particular belief system down anyone's throat. They're simply pointing out the limitations of a purely materialistic worldview and inviting us to consider other possibilities.
It's like they're saying, hey, the universe might be indifferent, but that doesn't mean we have to be. We can still choose to seek connection, meaning, and maybe even a little bit of hope.
And who knows, maybe that very search is what makes us human.
That's a pretty good note to end on, don't you think?
I think so. It leaves us with more to ponder, more to explore, and isn't that what a good deep dive is all about?
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there, keep diving, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. We'll see you next time.
See that?